Hello and welcome to Housing and Economic Development. I'm Michael Shea, the host for this episode. In Arlington County, housing is a pretty important issue. It's on a lot of people's minds. So we're going to try to talk to someone who's working hard to make affordable housing in Arlington a reality, Nina Janopaul.
President and CEO of the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing.
Nina, thanks for coming to the program.
Sure. Nice to be here, Michael.
So Nina, can you explain first of all what your organization does?
Sure. The Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, we lovingly call it APAH, is a affordable housing developer. We're a not-for-profit organization. We have 1,000 homes in Arlington at 12 different locations. We were founded almost 25 years ago by a number of volunteers and have grown substantially over that time period. As Arlington's need for affordable housing has grown, we've really built our expertise in order to meet that expectation.
So, and you bring about 16 years or so of experience in the industry, and you've been there for about 6 years now.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly, Michael.
I think Arlington Mill has been a project of your organization for, I want to say a long time, but it's finally going to come to completion sometime this year.
It's very exciting.
Tell us about Arlington Mill.
Sure. Arlington County is developing a community center for the west end of Columbia Pike. Very important neighborhood. It had been identified back in the 90s as underserved with community services. As part of that process, they acquired a 2-acre site and started to put a suburban-style community center on it. And the local advisory committee said, well, why are we doing that? This is a urbanizing community. We should be thinking in urban terms. Let's put a 5-story community center along Columbia Pike and use the back half of that site for affordable housing. The county put out an RFP, a request for proposals, back in the summer of 2010. APAH was very grateful to be selected in that, and we moved actually in our world fairly quickly. We got all of our approvals for our design in March of 2011. We got our financing in June of 2011. Took us about a year to finalize our plans and broke ground with the county. The county actually built the parking garage that we share for us. So that happened in the summer of 2012, and 18 months later we should have 122 homes ready to move in.
Right. Just to be clear, though, when you came up with the idea for the larger community center and the affordable, construction wasn't underway. That was all still part back in the planning process.
Exactly. The county bought an old grocery store.
Right.
I can't remember.
I think it was a Safeway.
Safeway. Right. They bought an old Safeway and they used it for a few years as a community center, and then decided that their ambitions were greater than that. They just didn't want to have a reused 1-story grocery store, but something that really could be purpose designed. So that was really a long community process. APAH wasn't quite at the table. We take part in advocacy discussions in our community, but we weren't actually selected as the developer until years later.
I also understand there's a lot of interesting things planned for the residents. I mean, in terms of developing community services there. So what are some of the ideas?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's got an innovative design where we will have a very large community center that opens onto a playground area that's built on top of this parking garage. So we'll have a tot lot that can be used for all the children. The property we're designing has 80% of the units are family-sized, 2 and 3 bedrooms. So we're expecting lots of kids to be there. We have already received some grant funding to put in a resident services program. I think we'll emulate what we've done at some of our other properties, things like English as a second language, computer literacy, financial literacy. We work with some of the stronger nonprofits in our community that bring programs to our residents, and we try and do that after we've assessed what the residents' needs are. We work with a group called Greenbrier Learning Center to do after-school enrichment. They've expressed some interest to coming to Arlington Mill as well. We've worked with APAH, Arlington Food Assistance Center, to help families with food insecurity on the lower end of our income spectrum. And of course, an important partner for us will be the county. They're putting in this brand new 5-story community center. So we hope to work with them hand in glove. They're going to have a Head Start program there for low-income preschoolers, senior lunch program there for low-income seniors, kind of a therapy, physical fitness center, mostly focused again on seniors, and then this group REAP, which works out of Arlington County Public Schools, will run English as a second language courses, and that's not the end of it. They're still in the process of sort of figuring out how they're going to use this beautiful new space.
Right. I don't think maybe people realize that your organization does a lot of building and developing, but there's there's then the services, the community, building the community, whether it's in partner with some of these groups or somebody else who designed, is an important part of it.
Absolutely. As all of us realize in our own neighborhoods and our own lives, it's great to be able to have a neighbor that you can lean on, or a church community when somebody in your family is ill, or those resources are part of what helps your household get by the good times and the bad times. You share a little when you're doing well, and you help your neighbor when you're being challenged. So we try and build that same sense of community in our apartment complexes. And it's exciting to me to see how that works. You know, two neighbors that have small children, well, one mom can actually go in and start working if the other mom starts taking care of the preschoolers in their family too, and it raises the income of both households. The one that's staying home might get paid a little bit for that. The one that's going out brings some more income into the family. So community building is a part of what we do. Sharing assets. One person has a car, one person has a van, maybe he can help give his neighbor a ride. And of course then sharing the assets of our greater community. Arlington's such a rich community in terms of its generosity. So to be able to reach out to APAH or the Arlington Free Clinic and use the resources that people have provided there. And our residents may not know about those. Right. So some of it is we're just the gatekeepers to that.
Right, but now you don't have a very large staff.
No, we don't.
So, and it seems like there's a lot of, I mean, you rely on partners a lot, you work with partners a lot, but it seems like there's an awful lot of expertise that has to come into your organization. Are you able to recruit for people for like that, or what? How do you make that happen?
Sure. Good question, Michael. That's a constant challenge. And I would say, for example, our resident services staff, we benefit right now from having two of our resident services coordinators are Peace Corps alumni. So they know how to go into a strange community, talk to people, bilingual. It's very important to us that we have people that speak the most common second language we see in our properties is Spanish. Not entirely, we have Arab, Mongolian, some other things. We can't cover all of them. Right. So we look for people that know how to reach out to a community, know how to help coordinate programs. That's one part of our job set. The other part is, of course, the real estate side. Right. And we're dealing with pretty high-end real estate challenges, complicated layered financing, partnership agreements. You know, this deal at Arlington Mill, we're on top of the county's parking garage. We have a 50-page, it's called reciprocal easement agreement. Who pays for when the station at the entrance to the parking garage goes down, who cleans the loading dock, who runs the security camera, how do we book our space together. So we have a wonderful staff that I'm proud to say many of them have come to APAH specifically for the mission. So in our development team, for example, we have a former staff person from Clark, former staff person from Kettler, and a former staff person from Aimco, a REIT. So these three are all Arlington residents that came because they wanted to do something in their community, but they're bringing this whole range of the for-profit real estate development sector's strengths.
Right.
And of course, on top of that, we have a wonderful board. Right. And so those are people who give us their advice, bankers, accountants, lawyers, and they're always trying to steer us in the right direction. You know, this would be a great opportunity. This is a good organization to work for, or a group to partner with, or a group to hire, you know, as they help us find the right architect, the right general contractor. So, you know, we borrow a little, we bring some expertise in-house, but yes, we have a staff of 14, and that's a little small for having a couple of $30 million projects underway at the same time.
Right. But you have an engaged board, and that's really important with any organization, any nonprofit organization, to have an engaged board that is knowledgeable about it and has the energy to push in the right direction. You've also recently completed a project at Buchanan Gardens, or is there?
We had substantial completion in October. We had a grand opening in October. Mary Hines, then chair, cut the ribbon for us, along with a resident who helped inaugurate that day. That's 111 units. We did a substantial rehabilitation to that 1949 property. It had the original boilers. It had no air conditioning. It had, you know, enough electricity to wire, you know, either a toaster oven or a hairdryer, but not both. So we brought that into the 21st century. And it was a long process. That took 18 months because it was a phased process. We really didn't want to displace our residents, so we were doing only 3 buildings at a time, which of course made it longer and a little more difficult, but we're very proud that we retained 70% of the residents that were there before we started construction. That just wrapped up, and I would say with our work we have all these layers of financing and investors and other things, so we're not quite done with all the paperwork. That they wanted us to reach stabilization, which meant we had 3 months of occupancy at a certain level of debt service coverage, a certain level of income over our debt, but I think we're almost done.
Right.
So Buchanan Gardens is almost on the shelf. And
you retain 70%, and my expectation though would be you'd find with the improvement you're going to retain an even higher percentage going forward. I mean, you're creating a stable community of people that don't get priced out, don't feel like they have to move find something better.
Absolutely. We find that in our portfolio overall has about a 20% retention rate, and once we renovate a property, and particularly the family-sized units, the turnover goes down even lower than that. People really love being in Arlington. The schools are very supportive of a diverse community, families that aren't native English speakers, so they don't want to leave. And we want them to stay and to grow with their jobs, grow their income, and raise their kids in our community.
And the numbers that I've seen, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's that particularly a 3-bedroom apartment that Arlington is in desperate need of, because that's over years, that's some of the units that you might lose, or they don't get billed as much as the studio or the 1-bedroom apartment. And that's where families that want to move here, they need that.
I think a couple of factors are impacting that. One is a lot of our housing stock in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was really built for single workers coming here for the growing federal government, the construction of the Pentagon, the growing federal workforce, and the expectation was, well, I don't know, single people would come and live here for a few years and then move away. I'm not ever sure, but it was to respond to that housing need. Right. So Buchanan Gardens is a good example. It was 80% 1-bedrooms when we bought it, but when we renovated, we added some bump outs to the building, so we changed it to be 50% 2 and 3 bedrooms. So that's one reason why there's a shortage. Just a lot of our older inventory is predominantly 1-bedroom. But a second factor is, as our single-family home prices have gone up, more and more families who want to live here can't find the housing for that. I think there was a little bit of a tradition. You had 1 or 2 kids. Well, you had 1 kid, or you had no kids, you lived in Arlington, you had 2 kids, you moved out to Fairfax or someplace further out. Well, people don't want to do that anymore. Right. So it's creating a pressure on those few 2 and 3 bedrooms that were in kind of the market portfolio, and those have been in high demand. So we need to deliberately build 2 and 3 bedrooms that are affordable, or people can't find them in the community. Right.
Why don't we talk about Queens Court development now, because this is something that's very complicated and very big, and it's kind of in the early stages. So where are we with that?
Well, a little like Arlington Mill, when the county tries to do something ambitious, a 2-acre parcel, community center, affordable housing, it sometimes takes years to get everyone on the same page. So Queens Court is sort of new, but it's sort of old. We've been talking to Arlington County since I got to APA in 2007 about the idea of doing a partnership there. Wilson School is on about a 2.5-acre parcel of land, and it is underutilized. Right. It has been added on to over the years. It's not ADA accessible. It doesn't meet current standards for a school. So Arlington Public Schools owns that facility, but they haven't used it as an occupied school for years. They used to use it as swing space when they were renovating schools. Right. So Arlington Public Schools has for years been thinking they need to do something with that parcel. Next door is Fire Station number 10. It serves Roslyn, our high-rise community. It was built in the 1950s. It's not meeting contemporary standards either. So for the last 5 years, we've all been talking about APA's Queens Court property, another 1940s garden apartment complex. It has window air conditioning units, the old boilers, problems with the underground sanitary. So it's long been on the plans to tear down Wilson School, tear down Queens Court, tear down the fire station, and build those new amenities for the community there. New fire station, new modern affordable housing, and an urban park. A lot of interest in having a nice big 1.5-acre or more urban park in the middle of that Roslyn community. Right. But how do you pay for all that? So that's, I think, what's been some of the rub. And the expectation has been that maybe there's a developer that can come in and put in some high rises along Wilson Boulevard. That land is so valuable that that'll help pay for the fire station, pay for the affordable housing in the urban park, and actually give the school system some money to pay for the new schools they're building elsewhere in the county. complicated.
So the urban park would be basically where Wilson School is now. Would that be the
I think
rough
so.
idea?
Well, the idea was maybe move it back from Wilson Boulevard.
Okay.
So kind of shelter it
Right.
amidst the buildings.
Right.
But all of this has kind of been in discussion, and it hasn't quite come out to the light of day. So the planning director said in his 2013 work plan, this is the year we want to do it. Create a citizens commission that will be appointed by the county board, and they will help guide that process. That's the traditional way Arlington does these kind of things. They did that at Arlington Mill. They had an Arlington Mill steering committee. So my expectation is that'll be appointed sometime this summer, and we can get to serious work of designing this space, listening to all the stakeholders.
Right.
Not everyone's going to get everything they want. APAH would love to see 280 units of affordable housing there, similar to our Park Roslyn apartments 2 blocks away. We may have to take a haircut on that. We may not get all that. I think some people have thrown out they want to see a 6-acre park. Use the entire site as for fields and basketball courts. I don't know that makes the most sense for that. And certainly, I think everyone's in agreement that we need to have good fire safety. So that will happen no matter what.
Because that becomes the challenge for any fire department, not just the response time, but then with the high rises going in, you have to add this vertical response time too. I know the fire chief has been very concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that fire station is situated now, it draws out on Wilson Boulevard, which actually sends it away from Roslyn. So in terms of response time, first thing they have to do is head away from Roslyn and make a U-turn and head down Clarendon Boulevard. So that's not a good situation.
Something must change.
Yeah.
But you've identified some options for Queens Court. It sounds like they're coming from the people that you work with, but also from some maybe the Civic Association or various the normal sort of people that weigh in on have come to that. What do you see as the next steps? You talked about a steering committee.
Yeah, the county appointing a citizens committee. We've engaged an architect and done a couple of sketches, including doing just a low rise on our existing site. We think that it could comfortably handle about 100 units in a wood frame construction. It's a very economical way to proceed. The county's asked us to look into ideas of having affordable housing on top of a fire station. There's some constraints in that because the fire station has to have very high ceilings, has to have a big apron to ventilate the trucks that have to run for a half hour a day. But I think there might be a way to do it, but we also have to operate within affordable constraints for our construction costs. So there's some models, for example, if we were to do the fire station and just 4 stories above it, the combination would raise our construction costs so much we might not meet our state financing limits. So there are a lot of kind of pieces of the Sudoku puzzle to put together. But I think
a Ken puzzle too, even more complicated.
Ken
is more complicated.
Oh, that's over my head.
There is there's an arrangement like that now in Alexandria.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Over a fire station, and it's been around for a little while. But
they completed, I want to say, in 2009.
Okay.
And it's a little smaller, and so there's some lessons learned from there. We actually met with them. Some of their operating costs and their development costs were quite high per unit. So we need to figure out a way if we're going to do that combination of fire station and affordable housing to do it in a little more economical way. But the good news is it is working, and they all like each other.
Was it the same? Was it the same thing? A partnership between this, in that case, the city government and a developer?
Yeah.
That was the idea. Right?
Yeah. It was an affordable housing group that the city got to work with the fire department. They shared the architect, shared the general contractor. As our former county manager used to say, Arlington County doesn't do easy, so neither does the city of Alexandria. We're in a land-constrained environment. So when we need to do things, we're going to have to learn to be on top of each other and creative in how we use our dirt. There isn't a lot of it here, 26 square miles. So.
Well, my son keeps saying, he's in middle school, that we need to just build taller schools. Build a school.
Okay.
And I try to say, but it's awfully hard when you have elementary school kids to have them up and down 4 or 5 flights of stairs. You know, this is not something that's feasible. He just, no, keep the kindergartners on the ground floor and we'll be fine. So.
We had he actually wasn't our son, he was an exchange student living with us for a year who was in the Washington Lee High School the year it went from being a basically a suburban school to a 4 or 5 stories. And it was interesting because he said the first few days, everyone stood in line to ride the elevator. So like, I don't have time to climb the stairs. And the teachers made a rule, said you can't use the elevator unless, you know, you're in a wheelchair, got crutches or some other need for it.
Why they're in there.
Yeah, and he said for the first week or so, there were a couple of kids with their big backpacks huffing and puffing to get to the 4th floor. But guess what? Exercise is actually good for young people. So your son may be onto something.
I think he might be onto something. I keep telling me he should get on one of the committees, the facilities committee, but he hasn't applied yet.
They would love him. They would love him.
You mentioned Park Roslyn before. So that's a property that you developed, well, relatively speaking, a while back. But are you changing the? Are you doing a buy? What's going on with Park Roslyn?
What's going on with Park Roslyn?
Yeah.
Well, I can start with kind of the little piece of history.
Yeah.
APAH bought this 22-unit garden apartment complex on 30,000 square feet in 1995. And I like to think of this as a great role model for land banking, which, as we look forward, I hope we're going to be able to do again. It's located between the courthouse and Roslyn neighborhoods. And we got approval from the county to turn that little piece of dirt into a 15-story high-rise, 238 units, of which today 100 are affordable housing. So it's a great place, really dynamic, you know, people paying market rents, people paying affordable rents. There's even a few folks there on rental subsidy. We did that in partnership with a local developer who came in and provided some of the guarantees and did the construction and our property management. That delivered in 2008, just a year after I got to APAH. And one of my assignments as the new director of the organization was to figure out a way to buy out our partner. It had been anticipated as part of the development because it was our dirt to begin with, and what a great thing for APAH to own this asset, but we needed a partner to kind of get us over those development hurdles. So next month, I hope, APAH will be the 100% owner of that property. We had a fixed price buyout, and we had to hit certain thresholds of the income to be able to borrow a little bit more money from our state agency to buy them out. So pretty soon it'll be our biggest asset.
And from what I've heard, it has a community feel to it. People there feel like they're part of a community. I mean, there's common rooms, and there's the rooftop deck, which probably has one of the best views you can get in Arlington.
Absolutely.
So it's probably been a big success in just building a sense of community.
We have a staff person there who comes part-time to help address any needs from the low-income residents, meet with them one-on-one. We actually had a mixer with them recently. They love living in that community, but some of their needs are a little different from the market renters. So we have our person to deal with that. There's also a concierge at the front desk all day who does everything ranging from, you know, taking dry cleaning drop-offs and package drop-offs and arranging rental cars. And the concierge will do some social activities for everyone in the building. It has a fitness center. I was really pleased to see that everybody uses the fitness center, and a swimming pool on the roof deck.
Oh, I've not actually been up at the roof deck, so I didn't know there was a swimming pool. That's quite nice.
Yeah. It's a great property. A good model for what can be done when you use creative finance and again, APAH using its land banking to allow this to happen.
Maybe you should just explain the term land banking.
The concept is APAH buys some parcel of land that today may not be worth as much as it could be in the future if it was rezoned and replanned. So in this case, in the Park Roslyn apartments, we went to the county. County owns a park next door, and we said, how about you transfer some of the density from that park onto our parcel? Land use entitlements is a very complex topic. As you might imagine, in a community like Arlington, it's very important. It creates a lot of value where there isn't. So the difference between 10 stories and 15 stories created some economies of scale, some opportunity for us to do things we couldn't have otherwise. So we see this as a part of our mission as an affordable housing developer. We'll go in and buy a parcel of land. Maybe it has 30 units on it today. We actually have another property, we call it the Carlin Springs apartment, with 27 units on it. It's an old 1960s building. Actually, the wall is bowing a little bit. It's kind of a modest design. And we have gone through a multi-year process with the community to change the general land use plan for that site. So now that site can have more than the 27 units on it. It can have up to 120 units on it. So we've started that process with the community. We're going to tear it down and build a brand new 21st century 5-story apartment building there, fully accessible, underground parking. So land banking is us taking the land and by us not taking a profit on it.
Right.
You know, another entity might buy the land. If they rezone it, they've changed the value of that land. The land may go from being worth $3 million today with 30 units on it to $10 million with 100 units on it. But that delta, that difference, we're not going to charge that back to our
Right.
affordable housing property. That's part of our mission. That's what we
Right.
give back to our community.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. And so that'll be is that the next
That's probably
big thing?
our next big thing
Yeah.
after Arlington Mill. Exactly. So
Right.
we just submitted our site plan a little while ago, and our expectation is we'll go through the public hearing process during 2013 and try and get our financing in early 14 and break ground by the end of 2014.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank our volunteer crew for working on our program today. They've been great. And I also want to particularly thank Nina Janopaul for everything she does to make housing affordable in Arlington. Thank you very much.
Michael. Pleased to be here.